Continuing our special with Kathi Miracle. Important documents and planning.
Vlogging pod starts like a conversation. Cup of coffee with no destination. Just voices trying to understand what's happening across this land. From your stories told to the pages turned. Every question, every word, supported by SheShareStudios.net.
Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Today we're continuing our dementia discussion series with dementia educator and advocate Kathi Miracle. Hi, Kathi. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me back.
Oh, I'd love to have you back. Now, before we jump into today's topic, Kathi, for listeners who may be joining us for the very first time, what are some of the signs and symptoms families should be looking for that could indicate dementia or cognitive decline?
So, one of the things I really have stressed a lot in the last couple of years is that dementia doesn't start the day someone forgets their car keys or they forget to turn the stove off. We now know that changes in the brain can start happening up to 20 years prior to an actual dementia diagnosis. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of time to protect and maintain cognitive health. However, what I usually have families or individuals start looking for is when someone, if they do lose their keys, a lot of us, if we don't put them in the same spot when we come home, which is me, I do that. I can at least stop and say, okay, I know I walked in the door. I put this down. Oh, they must be over here on this table. And sure enough, they are. I can retrace my steps. But people who start experiencing cognitive decline are not able to retrace their steps. And they get more and more confused or more frustrated or more overwhelmed the more people are asking them. They ask a lot of repetitive questions. They ask questions that seem really out of the ordinary. I just talked with a gentleman this morning, and his wife does not believe she has cognitive decline on any level. And they were driving to run an errand a couple of days ago, and she in the truck looked at him and said, "So tell me what's going on here. Are we married or what?" And he
Ah,
the road because they had been married for almost 60 years. And it just caught him so badly by surprise. And I just feel for people when those types of conversations start happening. People will find things in a spot that they don't belong, like the remote control is in the refrigerator, or they will put the car keys in the box of cereal. So all of a
mm,
sudden, start thinking, well, what's going on here? Bills go unpaid. Somebody is not as well kept as they normally are, like someone who's very meticulous about their appearance all of a sudden starts looking very disheveled, or they haven't taken a shower, or when you go to their home you can see that dust is on tables, which never would have happened. So you start seeing people get out of their routine. They're sleeping more, so they sleep in and they're not right up at the crack of dawn on a regular basis, or they're up more at night and they're not getting as good of sleep, or they're not eating as nutritiously as they are. Any time of change in their routine or their behavior all of a sudden should start raising some red flags for individuals. The problem becomes is that we live in such a fast-paced society that, as especially if we're in that sandwich generation where we're taking care of mom and dad and we're raising kids and we have a
mm.
career. You hear mom or dad maybe repeat themselves or something doesn't make sense, and you stop for a moment and you go, "Are you okay?" And they'll say, "Oh, I didn't get a good enough sleep," or, "I'm just having one of those moments," or, "It's just feeling a little off." And sometimes as children, we go, "Oh, yeah, I know I have those days too." And we sort of excuse it away because we really don't want to think that that's what's happening. And so, unfortunately, we kind of go into this denial state when that's during the time when we really should be paying attention.
Mm. I can relate to a lot of that. My mother lives on the property. She lives across from my she shed in her own apartment. So yeah, I understand that whole. And my husband's mother had dementia as well.
Mm.
So now, as we continue our discussion, because if anyone knows that's been following the program, you and I have spoken before on dementia and the challenges families may face along the way. So let's take a few moments to talk about planning ahead when you're making sure important documents are in place before major medical, legal, or caregiving decisions to be made.
Mhm.
So, Kathy, why is it so important for families to begin discussing legal and medical documents before a dementia diagnosis progresses too far?
Well, so when there's lots of documents that I call it important documents to organize and to be mindful of. Let's start with the legal component because when somebody gets too far down the dementia journey or they are cognitively declining, at some point, they legally cannot sign a legal document. The attorney who is meeting with them, if they question on any level that this person may not be able to understand what they're actually signing, they can't sign it. An
Mm,
attorney not going to, usually these are family attorneys, elder law attorneys, estate planning attorneys, and they are not going to put their law license on the line. If they allowed somebody to sign a legal document that they shouldn't be signing, that actually puts their law license at risk. And so I work with a lot of attorneys, and they know that if there is a question about somebody's capacity, that they have to come see me, and I go through a very rigorous cognitive assessment with the individual and provide a report to the attorney what I believe, whether they have the ability to understand what they're signing. So I usually tell people, and quite honestly, from when we look at legal paperwork, when we talk about legal paperwork and we're talking about a power of attorney, for
mhm.
financial decisions, for medical decisions, quite honestly, we should really be encouraging people in their 20s, as soon as they turn 18 and they can sign a legal document. Because if those individuals get in a car accident and they're in a coma and there is no legal paperwork in place, that's going to be difficult for even parents to make the medical decisions for that individual. So I'm a big proponent at when someone turns 18, they actually should have those documents in place and you want to update them and change them. But especially as soon as you start thinking mom or dad have a cognitive decline or a spouse you might be concerned about that. You want to get into an attorney's office and be able to set up those documents as soon as possible. Or usually, as soon as somebody has a diagnosis, which it can take a lot of time to get a diagnosis too,
Mm, yeah,
usually they're still in a area where they can still sign they're starting to become a little bit more confused. If you wait too long, then the family faces other challenges with having to get a guardianship, and a guardianship
yeah.
you have to go through the courts. Emergency ones can be set up, but it can start costing thousands and thousands of dollars to get in a guardianship. And I will tell families, I educate them that the 5 minutes somebody's going to be alert is the 5 minutes in front of the judge. And I've seen families get super frustrated that they're going in, they're trying to get a judge to grant guardianship because they need to make these decisions. And dad's there, and all of a sudden, dad's alert and answers every question the judge
Mm,
has. Judge
mhm.
says, "I'm not going to grant this," and dad walks out and says, that was a great pancake place." And you're like, "Why couldn't this have happened 10 minutes ago in front
Mm,
of a judge?" And so those
yeah,
become a lot more challenging than people believe they are because a judge is not going to, take away somebody's rights. That's going to be kind of the last thing they want to do. And they're seeing a snapshot of who that individual is. So I always say, that legal paperwork, make sure you have a power of attorney. Make sure I always tell people if you can, have one person making financial decisions, have one person making medical decisions. Make sure there is a backup. I have seen powers of attorney. In fact, I had one where four daughters were all made with equal decision making rights. And
oh,
they did not live all in the same state, and I asked one of the daughters and I said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, "Well, my mom didn't want to make a decision and put one of us and not all of us." And I go, "But here's the problem. If mom goes to
mhm.
the hospital, all four of you have to be in agreement." She goes, "No, that's not how it works." And I go, "Oh, no, that's exactly how it works." And she goes, "No, whoever's here locally with mom is the one who makes the decision." I go, "I'm not sure who told you that, but that is absolutely not true." And so make sure that there's only one person with a backup person. When you start putting multiple people at the same decision making level, that becomes very complicated very quickly because they all legally should be making that decision together. And when they don't agree, you're delaying time to get care for somebody. So there should only be one person made as a primary individual on that legal paperwork with backup plan and maybe a backup to the backup plan in case anything happens. So that's
Right.
usually first recommendation on get your legal paperwork in order. I also really encourage, well, this is not legal paperwork, also have a lot of discussion around end of care and final wishes. And that starts to get into like what happens. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you not want to be resuscitated? Hospice companies have a great thing called the five wishes. And five wishes are not a legal document, but it does help people walk through how they want to be remembered. Like, do they want a memorial service? Do they want certain things read? Do they want songs? I mean, you kind of start planning your memorial service or your funeral, which can feel yucky. Those of us in America, this is not dinner table conversation, and end of life discussions can become uncomfortable. However, I've also seen children who refuse to sign hospice paperwork because they believe they're playing God with mom or dad's life or their spouse's life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Because the discussions never happened. So, as uncomfortable as they can be, that five wishes document is a great document just to start saying, okay, let's start with these conversation pieces. And it doesn't all have to happen in one spot, spread it out over a couple of weeks. But having those decisions made, because I've had people who they literally didn't know if mom wanted to be buried or cremated. And I was like,
Mm,
well, that's an important decision. Or, do we uphold religious beliefs, for the
mhm.
Catholic community, the Jewish community, there are very, very step-by-step things that they want done to support the religion that they have followed lifelong. And if you have not had those discussions, how do you know you're honoring final wishes? So those are
Right.
other documents that I kind of say, hey, you need to get these things. Those are the first two. I say focus on these two things, get them taken care of. And then you can always revisit them in 12 months. You can always revisit them down the road, but get those done and in order so everybody is on the same page with wishes.
Right. Now, I I don't know if everybody, and I don't know per state. I'm in Ohio, and I just from my own experience, my father's since passed, but about 3, 4 years now. But at the time, we were looking, and my sister at the time, who has as well as passed away, but at the time, she would wanted me to look into power of attorney. And I was speaking with a doctor because at that time, I had no experience. And this was the biggest time that I wish I had you. Because I spoke to a lot of professionals, doctors and nurses at the time, and I told everybody, "I have a podcast. I would love for you to be here to speak on this kind of stuff." Again, this could be different per state, but my experience, it's not easy to try to get power of attorney. The doctor that I spoke to, my dad's heart doctor at the time for the hospital, not his personal heart doctor, but he told me if they know the date, if they know who's president, there's some simple questions, you know what I mean? And just like
Uh-huh.
what you made the point of saying is that once they leave, like, "Oh, that was a great pancake place," that's exactly what I'm talking about. As my dad had several now, I don't know if at that time he was dementia because we didn't we didn't have the opportunity to go down those paths, but we saw a decline greatly within the course of his healthcare. And so much so that we were looking into those options, but it's not the easiest thing to go down and get those. As far as that kind of am I making sense here, I hope?
Well,
Uh,
so here, let me put it this way. To actually get the documents to be put into like to fill them out and have an attorney ready to go and have everything signed, that's
mhm.
actually not a hard process. Now, to get somebody declared incompetent where the power of attorney kicks in, that's what I think you're talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
that's
he wasn't very clear, but then there would be times of clarity, and it was do you know what I'm saying? There was very brief, and he had oxygen deficiency and different things, so there were times that he was more cognitive, and there were times that he wasn't. Just like what you said, the times it seems like the times that he wasn't is when, you weren't in that position where you're like, "Hey," you know what I mean? "This is what we need to do or we don't need to do." It wasn't as a parent. So it's not as easy. Do you think having these types of forms in place just on the off chance that I mean, are there forms in place that you could have say, "Okay, if my cognitive ability goes down, I need this, this, and this taken care of."
oh,
In your
absolutely.
forms
Well, so you can Depending on your estate planning attorney. So when my husband and I did our estate, we created a trust for our family. The attorney we used was fantastic because he made sure that we had our powers of attorney set up. He went through and looked at advanced directives. It's kind of like if you were in a car accident and you needed to be on life support, what would you want to have done? Like, how long would you want to be on life support? And when do you think the family could make the decision to pull the plug or to sustain you on life support? I mean, he really did some deep diving into decision making. And we have a lot of stuff in writing where if something should happen, our kids know what decisions to make and when to make them based on the decisions we already made and put into the legal document. So that
Right.
can absolutely happen. So when you have legal documents set up, a good attorney will do the powers of attorney. They will do advanced directives. They will talk to you about a do not resuscitate. Now, a do not resuscitate is not a document an attorney is going to fill out. That is something that you and your doctor complete, and it's different in every state and as to the decisions that get made. And those are usually updated once a year, every couple of years with the doctor to ensure that your decision is still your decision. To actually activate it, that's a little bit different. And yes, it depends on the type of cognitive assessment a doctor is doing in their office. And it's how well educated they are doing that too. So I always tell people to keep a diary, keep documentation, because you've watched this individual, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a sibling, even a child. I've had actually people who the parent was really cognitively intact and the child was not. Like the child maybe be at 70 or 80 years old and mom or dad are 95 or 100 and they were more cognitively intact than the child was. I have had that couple situation happen a couple times, but I always say keep a diary, you can record things and be saying, I've had people video things, I've had people audio record things, I've had people take very good notes, journal diarying to take into a doctor's office to say, you're seeing this person for 15 minutes. I've been watching them over the last 6 months, and these are the things that I consistently see. And it paints a bigger picture for the doctor to be able to look at the whole picture versus a 5-minute, 10-minute slot. Now,
Mhm.
some doctors' offices will do a mini cog. A mini cog takes like 3 minutes to do, and it doesn't test every area of the brain. It's not that hard to pass. Some doctors will do what's called the mini mental. One of the questions on the mini mental is, what is your mother's maiden name? I could give you any name, and as long as I give you a name, you have to mark it correct. You may not even know if that's actually.
Really?
Yep, and so the mini mental
Wow.
also does not test every part of the brain. I am partial to the SLUMS. The SLUMS is the St. Louis University Mental Status Exam. It was created back in the 70s. I'm also partial to the MoCA. The MoCA is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and I lean towards the Kingston. The Kingston is a very thorough cognitive assessment that tests every part of the brain. Those are ones, although, again, not perfect. When my mom was going through some cognitive decline, I went with her to the doctor's office, as did my father. And the
Mhm.
nurse let my dad and I sit in the room. And my dad was giving my mom hints on the answer,
Ah.
which when she would say them, they got marked correct. And the nurse was giving my mom hints on a couple of things. I was like, where am I at? Like, what is going on? You're not
Yeah.
supposed to have people in the room when you're doing a cognitive assessment for those reasons.
Mhm.
So my mom had actually scored very high on this test, and the doctor's like, I don't understand why you're concerned. I'm like, well, let me explain what I do for a living, first of all, and then let me explain what happened and trying really hard not to throw anyone under the bus. But like, I go, this isn't 3 minutes. This is me watching and observing, and this is my career. And, fortunately, my mom had a great doctor who listened to me and, we kind of moved forward on getting some help. But I really encourage people to document, 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 because the more you can, and now with health portals, there's times when my mom sometimes want me to go with her to a doctor's appointment and sometimes she doesn't. She'll take care of it herself. But
Mhm.
if I'm going, I will email the doctor. I'll go into the health portal and just kind of say, here are some concerns I know my mom's talked about. I'm not sure if you want to help elaborate on these. And so you can sort of give a doctor a heads up too, like here's the things we've been noticing. And I can assure you, doctors truly, truly appreciate that information up front. But the more you can document and be able to help them understand what's going on, the better. Other people, like as a professional, when I was running assisted livings and memory cares, I wrote my handful of letters because people going and presenting something to a judge in a court or a doctor, we could say on a daily basis, these are the things we're observing. And so it just helps paint a much broader and complete picture for a person to make a decision.
Right. So now we had a lot of documents in there, a lot of information. So when we talk about the right things to do, tell me about the most common mistakes families make when trying to organize these documents and do all this future planning.
They delay doing any legal decisions. There's a tough conversations. Here just recently, a family that I'm working with, they need to go see their attorney. And I explained to the husband that I don't know that his wife is going to be capable of signing any documents. And he's concerned because there are some investments that are only in her name and she has to
Mm.
be able to, do something. And so I was like, so I would talk to the attorney and ask what your options are, but here's the concern. So what I see is people, they delay it. I also, while I know attorneys cost money, a lot of attorneys may help you with a payment plan, but I see people who will download documents off of the internet. I've seen people in fact, here recently. I've seen people who let AI help them, and while AI is great, I don't think I would trust AI to do anything legally. It
They
can,
definitely make mistakes. Let me
yeah,
let me just point that out. You always have to recheck your work,
you
always.
gotta recheck the work. It's not
Mhm.
always accurate, and it also, every state is a little different. So if
Oh,
I
yeah.
have some or daughter living in Texas and mom or dad live in California, and I'm using AI to create something for me in Texas, it may legally not hold up. So I
Mhm.
would tell people, please don't use AI when you're creating any kind of legal document, specifically something like this. Other mistakes I see is that people don't have the tough conversations, so they really don't know what mom and dad's wishes are. It's amazing to me how many people do not have a list of the doctors, of a list of medications, emergency contacts, copies of insurance cards. I always encourage somebody to have an emergency binder in the house. I ask them to have it in their car and I ask them to have it at home, both on the person with cognitive decline and the caregiver. Because if this is a spouse and let's say the wife is the one with cognitive decline and the husband's taking care of her, statistics will show us that he will have far more serious health concerns than she will because of the stress of caregiving. And if he has a heart attack and the 911 shows up, like she happened to call 911 or a neighbor called it and they show up, they're going to be asking, where is his insurance cards? What is his medication list? What is this? And she's probably not going to be able to answer any of those questions. And so they're transporting a person and they don't know what to give them on the way because they don't know if it's going to conflict with a medication or current medical condition. And it becomes very difficult for emergency personnel. So I always kind of say, you want to update those like at least once a quarter. I ideally would tell people to update them once a month because as we grow older, medications can change very quickly. Medical
Mhm.
conditions can change very quickly. It's very difficult to do that once a month. So at a minimum, once a quarter, but you want to make sure that it's easy. I mean, this is what we did in the assisted livings and the memory cares that when someone showed up, all I had to do was hand an envelope to paramedics and it had a copy of doctors, emergency contacts, insurance cards, medication lists. It had everything that someone would need. One of the things people really don't think about, and it's something that we are going to add to my website that people can download, I call it a person centered form. And so on this form, it's a front and back, but it has a picture of the individual so that people can identify them very quickly. But it talks about, do they wear hearing aids? Do they wear glasses? What is their preferred name? Can they answer questions on their own? Under their activities of daily living, can they transfer? Or do they use a cane? Do they use a walker? Can they, do they have any special needs? And so an EMT or a paramedic or even emergency personnel can look at this document very quickly, front and back, and know how to interact with this person until a family member can arrive at the emergency. And so the mistakes that I see people making is that they don't even think to have all of those things ready to go. Even having a go bag. If someone is walking out the door, having a quick go bag with a change of clothes and maybe some of somebody's favorite blanket or if sweets, I always say, It's rare that someone doesn't like chocolate. I do know people say they like chocolate, but when we feel any kind of emotion from the time we're born to the time we die, when we're overwhelmed, we're scared, we're depressed, we're frightened, we're angry, we're whatever it is, happy, the brain actually releases a chemical, and that chemical craves something salty, sweet, or fatty. So if you have just little chocolate kisses and they can give that to the person, it'll actually help them remain calm for a little bit of time until they can see a family member and feel reassured again. So having even a go bag that in the state of an emergency that can be given, or you can grab it as you're walking out the door to be with a person. Most people don't think of those things from a planning standpoint. So I encourage people to have these discussions when things are calm, have this binder ready to go. The reason I tell people to have it in a vehicle as well, because if you're in a car accident and someone has to be transported to
Oh,
an
did I
ER
lose you,
from
Kathy?
a car, or let's say something happens while you're out at an event, like you went to the zoo for the day and something happened, or you're out to dinner at a restaurant and something happens, you at least have those documents very quickly able to grab and either show up at an emergency room with or be able to hand directly over to somebody as the person's being transported to the emergency department.
Nice. So now, as our time's closing, I'm sorry. I know I love these conversations. So, with our time so close to the end, Kathy, for our listeners, remember for one thing they can remember about today's discussion, what would you want them to take away?
Oh no, I lost you. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. There, I popped in and out. We'll
Okay.
be editing. We'll be editing.
The
One
last
thing I
time
wanted.
for our listeners.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll edit. We'll be good. So, as we're closing our time, Kathy, what is one thing you want our listeners to take away from today's discussion?
I would say the one thing I would take away is have a good plan. Make a list of everything that I talked about today. And as hard as those discussions are, it doesn't mean that you have to have them all in one setting. Pick a different topic and sit down over weeks and be able to have those discussions and be able to get that paperwork in order and be able to have a plan. Because even when a crisis happens, people at least are a little bit more calm because they can rely on the plan. And you want to revisit that plan on a every 6 months or at least once a year to ensure it's still solid. People, when they're in crisis, when they don't have a plan, it becomes a lot more overwhelming and
Mm,
frustrating and scary.
I appreciate that. I want to thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us once again. And
Thank you
I
for
want to.
listening.
Oh wow, I love having you. We're gonna have you back.
Okay,
we're, we're
great.
gonna we're gonna do it again. I want to thank our listeners. Until next time. Bye bye for now.